green grass, blue skies, and boundless possibilities. For financial security, welcome to Genshin Impact, where you can sink all of your time and attention to do some random puzzles and trials for the sweet taste of chronic gambling addiction. With a savory side of depression, of course. The content of Teyvat is what sets Genshin apart from its contemporaries. One seamless open world that continues to expand with each and every update, only to be further developed by the game's characters and stories. Of course, there are other aspects of Genshin that warrants the game's success, but the open world has always been one of the defining factors that had led to such. All of this offered to you at the very low price of free. So when Honkai Star Rail entered the picture and was often coined as Genshin in space, many of those who were on the Genshin bandwagon tried hopping onto the Star Rail train. And the numbers do show exactly that, with Zila's banner outperforming many of Genshin's most profitable, only surpassed by the Queens of Genshin of course. But looking back now, you begin to notice a decline in Star Rail's performance, as values such as sales numbers and even views on platforms like Twitch are relatively smaller. And beyond just the numbers, more players begin to vocalize their issues with Star Rail, complaining about things such as the Lofu's designs, the Lofu's world, the Lofu story, the Lofu's Man, people really don't like the Lofu, do they? Many concerns were raised around the time of version 1.1 and 1.2, with a number of players expressing their dissatisfaction with the content being delivered, which was made even worse when news broke out that Star Rail would not be getting a new planet or region until version 2.0. This struck a chord with many players, as despite being a smaller game in scale, Star Rail's content release is no different from Genshin's, having the exact same release schedule with just about the exact same amount of content. And 10 free pools every version, I guess. Genshin could never. Naturally, this disconnect in quantity and quality has led players to be upset with the game's direction, and all of these complaints I find tend to lead back to one common sentiment, that being, Honkai Star Rail should have had an open world. Now whether or not that has much relevance is up for debate, but what that does show is not only how high expectations were for Star Rail, but also just how much merit players put into the open world of Genshin, because for a number of them, Genshin Impact was their first ever open world title, or even their first ever gacha game. And so that has set the standard for not only Star Rail, but any gacha game for the matter of fact. So having gone from the open world of Genshin to the more linear levels of Star Rail, maybe you can see why players would think that Star Rail lacks and needs an open world. Or maybe you can't, but I still think that is a question worth asking. Does Honkai Star Rail really need an open world? That is what we are going to answer in this video. To do so, we need to go back to the drawing board, because I think this can all be explained with something I have not used in a long while. That is right, I am pulling out the Venn diagram. So on one end, we have the Genshin Impact players, the ones who have either dropped Star Rail or have never bothered with the game at all. And on the other hand, we have the Honkai Star Rail players, which is the vice versa. Oh, and we have the middle here, of course, where the dumb and dumber are found. Like maybe you and me. Or just me. You know, I understand. I am the problem here. I'll just take my leave. And now I am back, here to tell you why no one wants an open world in Honkai Star Rail. Not the Genshin players, not the Star Rail players, not even me. No one. And here is why. Because an open world conflicts with everyone's interest. What do I mean by that, you might ask? Let's take a look at this Venn diagram to explain why an open world Star Rail would not matter to any of these players. Let's lay it all out and start with the Genshin players. The open world of Genshin Impact stands as one of the major pillars that makes the game's foundation. Without it, you would not see players vehemently defending Genshin when someone accuses the game of copying The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. You know what? Copying is a strong word. Let's leave it at referencing. Heavily referencing. So of course when they hear about another game from Hoyoverse that the people refer to as Genshin in Space, they would expect for there to be an open world. Even the original Honkai Impact 3rd has something similar to an open world format. However, Honkai Star Rail did not have that. Rather, the game instead opted for a more zone-based structure to its world, where every zone was curated to have a more linear design, and would connect to other zones via a loading screen. something you would expect from a traditional JRPG title, which Star Rail is rather blatant about when it comes to its inspirations. This shift from an open world to a more linear world becomes a major red flag for a number of Genshin players, as that is one of the many aspects they loved about their game. Get rid of the jump button, and now we have a problem. Let's talk about some hypotheticals. Let's say that Honkai Star Rail did get an update when open world was added. Something akin to Genshin or maybe even Honkai Impact 3rd. I mean, that appears to be the one thing that separates the games, right? Surely that would solve the issues that Genshin players have with Star Rail. Well, actually, no. That does not solve anything whatsoever, and here is why. I made mention that the open world forms one of the major pillars that supports Genshin. It is what draws many players to the game, but that is only one of the major pillars. Only one thing that separates the two games apart from each other. What about combat? Turn-based combat is completely different from action-based combat. What about setting? Sometimes space can be too large of a leap from medieval fantasy. What about mints? How can we farm mints when everything is dead? Even if the addition of an open world solves some issues, that is not going to turn the gears for many Genshin players. There are most likely other factors that made them quit Star Rail, and the lack of an open world was just one of them. Just because you get more content to do does not mean you will suddenly start enjoying the game. Multiplying 0 with another number is still 0, so no, adding open world to Honkai Star Rail will not appeal to most Genshin players. Most, I say. But what about those who play both games? Here in the middle are people like me. I am going to say that this lifestyle is not for everyone, because you are not stupid and play 4 gacha games at the same time. And maybe more in the future. Why yes, I am a boring person, how can you tell? But for people who play both Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail, adding open world to the latter would just create more busy work. For some people, that is a good thing. That is more to do in a game that they enjoy, and more power to them. But for others like me, who can barely spare time to sit down and play, that is just more content that they will not feel motivated to do. Why do you think so many Genshin players are so hesitant in trying out other open world games? Because Genshin on its own is already too much of an investment. I mean, having played Genshin for over a year now, I myself have not done much exploration whatsoever. So chances of me exploring an open world in Star Rail is pretty much 0. This doesn't apply to everyone of course, but I can imagine that at some point, having to explore 2 different open worlds may further lead to burnout on the player's behalf. Like, there is only so much enjoyment you can gain from solving puzzles, doing trials, and respecting how detailed the character models look. Actually, you can do that already. I just wanted an excuse to pull some math, which is why people like me are still able to keep up with both games. And that is credit due to Honkai Star Rail, as there is actually a reason why this is possible. But to explain why that is the case, I now need to talk about the other side of the conversation, that being the Honkai Star Rail players. So let's talk. Okay, this might sound just a little silly, but I think I need to make a statement. Are you ready? Here I go. You can like Honkai Star Rail and not like Genshin Impact. I know, what a terrible revelation, right? How dare you like a trash game like Honkai Star Rail, but not like Genshin Impact, which is objectively the best video game in the entire world, with objectively better characters, better gameplay, and better stories. Sorry. I just wanted to poke the bear with that bit. But really, there are people who genuinely enjoy Star Rail, but not Genshin. And that is because both games have their own appeal. Again, going back to the previous discussion, there are factors that Genshin players do not like about Star Rail, as are there factors that Star Rail players do not like about Genshin. Maybe they do prefer turn-based combat. Maybe they do prefer the space setting. Maybe they do prefer everything to be desolate and dead, like me. For real, this is a case of the grass being greener on the other side, as there are sometimes good things in the other game that its players value more. Not everything that may be a negative for you may also be a negative for them, but from my own experience, especially as someone who has played a good number of gacha games, there is a factor that Star Rail has that Genshin does not have, at least not much of, and that one factor happens to be convenience. Honkai Star Rail is very convenient to play, take into account the daily commission system, or the accessible home menu, or the ability to teleport anywhere, or the auto button. The auto button. Okay, sorry, but I need to get this out of my system. So the auto button is a rather complicated topic that people point to when they criticize Star Rail's gameplay, because when you are using it, you are technically not playing the game, and because you are not doing the one thing that you should do when you play a video game, that is a flaw with the game's design. Or so people say. But let me remind you that the auto button is an auto button. You can toggle this button on and off. So if you really want to actually play the game, simply do not use the auto button. It is not mandatory, and there is literally no harm in having one, because all the button does is make grinding more convenient. Dare you use it in content like Storm Disaster, and you will most likely get rolled. Unless you will on the game, to the point where your E6, R5, triple S tier characters can destroy everything even on auto. And to that I say, you did this to yourself. The auto button is not a substitute for playing the game. The auto button is just a tool for ease of use. And honestly, I wish Genshin had a similar thing. Give me the option to sweep a domain without having to do the same rotation on the same group of enemies every single time. Killing them for the 100th time is no more fun than killing them for the first time. Man. Sorry about that rant. I am a diehard defender of any auto features in gacha games, because at the end of the day, gacha games were made to be convenient. They were made to be played anywhere at any time, and that really is Star Rail's strong suit. Many of the game's features were designed to be convenient, allowing you to spend as much time as you desire in the game without feeling the need of completing something arbitrary, which is the complete opposite of Genshin, where you are actually encouraged to spend more time in the game, because the more you explore its world, the more rewards you can get. And this is where I believe the main difference lies between Genshin players and Star Rail players. Genshin players love that feeling of completing content, of being given tasks to do at the behest of some reward, whereas Star Rail players value convenience, being able to accomplish everything they need to do in a timely manner. Going back to the original point, adding open world to Honkai Star Rail is almost counterintuitive. Convenience is the name of the game, which cannot be found in content that is meant to waste your time. Just think about it. When a number of players are already tired of doing simulated universe runs every week, then what would an open world do for them? And I repeat, this does not apply to everyone. Some people do want Honkai Star Rail to have more content like that, which is completely fine, that is your opinion. But at this point, I think a majority of players have accepted the fact that the game will never go beyond its current scope. If you still think an open world Star Rail is possible, then I am sorry to tell you, but keep coping, buddy. Best you can hope for is something similar to the open worlds of Honkai Impact 3rd. With no jump button, of course. Got to keep tradition. But that marks the end of this talk. Whether you agree or disagree with my opinion, I think anyone can agree that an open world will not suddenly quote-unquote fix Honkai Star Rail. It might be cool in the moment, but as long as the core fundamentals of the game remains the same, then nothing will change, which is not a bad thing. Sometimes you just have to accept that people can like different things. Just because you like it doesn't mean anyone else has to, and vice versa. So in my humble opinion, Honkai Star Rail does not need an open world. If you liked the video, then do please leave a like. If not, then a dislike will do. And subscribe to the channel if you want more. Now go out there and please play better open world video games. You are doing yourself a disservice if you think Genshin is the best one out there.